Welcome to Backstage at the Enharmonic. I'm your host, Sean J. Kennedy. Today's guest is musician Jerry Vivino, most well known for being Conan O'Brien's saxophone player. It's been a privilege and honor to work with Jerry over the last few years in a variety of academic settings, working with young students, and I've also been privileged to perform with him, most notably out at the NAMM show in Anaheim, California, on a number of occasions when he hosts the Vando Jam, and I even got to play with him on the NAMM show floor at the Con Selmer booth. Today's episode focuses mainly on the positive influence of his parents and his teachers in his formative years, so I hope you enjoy this edition of Backstage at the Enharmonic.
Hey, Jerry, are you there?
Yeah. Sean,
hey, how
are you?
Yeah, man. Good, I'm good.
Good.
How are you?
Very good.
So thanks for taking a few minutes. We've talked over the past few years about stuff when you've done some clinics for me and different things like that, but I thought it'd be nice to ask some questions and get them recorded in a podcast where people can listen to them whenever they like.
Okay, great.
Awesome. So I start all of these podcasts with asking my guests, what is your earliest musical memory? Like, when you think back as far as you can, where do you think music really started to affect you and you noticed music in your life?
It might have been in the womb. No, I'm kidding. Growing up as a child in my house, my parents were. My father was a trumpet player, not a professional, but he could have been. He just took another route, and he just constantly was playing, big band. Anything from Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, Stan Getz. My parents tell me from when I was an infant that this kind of music was being played in the house, and my mom loved classical music. So I had both the best worlds, orchestral, jazz. There wasn't any Elvis or any rock and roll or anything like that. That came along later. But I think that's what rubbed off on me, and that would be my answer to that. Growing up in an environment where music was played out loud in the house.
Did he work in local wedding bands or anything, or just play at your house for fun?
My dad, who rests his soul, was a very, very fine trumpet player. He came over from Italy. He was born in 1927, so he's that generation of the greatest generation this country's ever seen. I think he comes from that fabric. And my dad played picked up a trumpet in grade school, like we all do. We're introduced through education. Here in the States, he was introduced to a band instrument, and he took to it like a duck to water. He actually worked as a carpenter from age 12, till he graduated high school, and he paid for his own music lessons. He studied with, some very reputable music teachers in Paterson, New Jersey, where he grew up. Paterson had a great music scene back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, through the 60s, and even the 70s. So, he studied and basically was drafted into the Army during World War II, and he played in the service, kept him here in the States. He didn't go overseas, and he always, he basically really was thankful for his music because he felt he would have been, in Germany or Japan, whatever. And he was a very good musician. When he got out of the Army, after the bomb was dropped, he was 20 years old, and he said to his father, who had a construction company, he said, "Pop, I want to be a musician." And his father said, "No, you're not. You're going to swing a hammer. You're going to be in the family business." And that was the way it was back then. And he played on the side. He did not play in wedding bands. He did not do any of that. He was basically would get together with jazz players and play. He didn't want to he couldn't do music full time. He didn't want to do it part time. So unfortunately for him, he put the trumpet down. But with me, it was, he saw that I took to music, and he gave me license to do what I wanted. And I think it was because of what he went through, you know.
Wow.
I don't know if that's explained in a very articulate way, but that's pretty much what it was about. Me and my brothers, we were all into music, and he encouraged it. He didn't push us, but he encouraged it. And go ahead, live your dream. He wasn't allowed to live his dream. Next, my mother, was a pianist and a painter. And, you know, she was a woman of the 50s, and she was raising the kids, and, basically a stay-at-home mom, they called it, you know, which is really doesn't exist today the way it did back then. But, so I was around music, and they were both very good, and I think they both could have pursued music. But, again, it wasn't encouraged by my mother's upbringing as well. You're not going to do this, you're going to do this, you know. So then she worked in a factory. Yeah. So, next. Are you crying?
Oh, okay.
Is anyone crying? No.
Yes, I think so. I think it's tissue. Yes, no.
Yeah.
It's it's a common story. You hear a lot about that, and it's great that they encouraged you and your brothers to follow your passions, which is incredible.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yep. So, I know you play just about every woodwind known to mankind. Were woodwinds your first instrument that you played?
I failed miserably at the guitar because I was, I'm a child of basically, Roy Rogers, Davy Crockett. I don't know if anyone who's listening to this would know about those television programs, but, in the 50s, I was born in 1954. Right. So, when I was 5 years old, these television shows were, basically, Roy Rogers was a singing cowboy, Gene Autry, and I fell in love with, and there's music again drew me into those shows. So because Roy Rogers played the guitar a little bit, I wanted to. And I took up the guitar. I got for Christmas a Roy Rogers guitar when I was about 7. And my father decided, well, let's try a real guitar. And I failed miserably. My hands were too small, it was too young, and, it was too early to start. And so I said, oh, well, how about the xylophone? I wanted to play the xylophone. I did pretty good with that, and, we always had a piano in the house, so I noodled with that. My brothers and I all played a little piano, and, but I really didn't take to the percussion. The xylophone thing for me was, a nice experience. I did it for about a year, and really, I didn't play. The teacher had the vibraphone. Is that what Lionel Hampton played?
Yes,
is that the big? Yeah, I mean, I had a little xylophone. A little.
Okay.
And I enjoyed it, but then I started. My father said, "Let's wait till you're about 9 or 10." But I had a flutophone, which was a plastic recorder called the flutophone. You could still get them. And I got to tell you, I played the piss out of it. I just took to it naturally. I would play melodies, and my father started noticing that I was playing real songs on it that I would hear. And he'd say, how did you learn that? I go, well, I've been listening to this song. You always play these records, and it could be Java by Al Hurd, or it could have been The Shadow of Your Smile by Boots Randolph. All the music that was in my house, I was taking in without knowing it. And that to me is so important for any young kid to have music and listen. And if they have the music inside of them, that's going to develop their ears. So my father saw that, and he said, you know what? He said, when you're 10 years old, you keep playing this flutophone, maybe we'll start you on the clarinet. And that's where it all started. And I went to the clarinet, and basically, I still have that flutophone, and I look at it every now and then and say, it's because of you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you have any favorite clarinet players when you started playing clarinet?
Well, I was exposed to Acker Bilk. Stranger on the Shore was a big hit. It was a huge hit on the top in the Pop 40 charts. And, it was 1964, but that was a hit in 62, but my father had the record, so I heard it a lot, and it was other songs on that record were Nobody Knows What Trouble I've Seen. I remember a lot of the tunes on the record. Spanish Eyes, and believe it or not, when I got the clarinet, I started playing those songs almost a month into once my chops got together. Again, my father said, "What? How did you know?" I said, "Dad, I've been listening to this." So he recognized that I had a good ear, and I said to him, "I want to play the saxophone." He said, "Nope, 5 years of clarinet. Wow. Show me you can earn the saxophone." And I studied legit clarinet with two different teachers. One was named Charlie Arlington, and the other Ray Gerrard. And Ray Gerrard is still alive, and he's in his late 80s, and he's a friend of mine, and he's had the most impact on me because he started teaching me clarinet when I was 11. I studied with Charlie for a year, and Charlie went on the road. He recommended Ray. That was Charlie Arlington, and Ray became like a second father to me. He took me under his wing and noticed that I really loved playing and practiced, and so I studied with Ray all the way through high school. So from 8 years, the most important years I feel he gave me, one-on-one. I didn't learn from the band director. I learned outside of band, and then was in band. I wasn't in band in the 4th grade. I took it up in the 5th because I was studying privately at home. And the band directors in my school, which was I was in Paterson, New Jersey. If you didn't study with them, you weren't in the band. And really? My father checked it out, and he said, "I don't want you studying in the school. I want you to learn, and then you'll go into band." And the band director was very nice, and he understood that. And then he auditioned me when I was in 5th grade, and I was a member of the band then. 4th grade in grade school when I was a kid was the year that you had to learn. Even if you were, I could have studied outside and still studied in band, but my old man was like, "You got to do math and English too. Do music at home. Let's see how you do, and then we'll just, It was a pretty good route that he had me take, I think.
So you did follow that 5-year plan that your dad had with the clarinet, and then you finally got to a saxophone?
That's right. I was 15, and it was just one Christmas. Santa Claus was out of our lives. Me and my brothers, we're all close in age. My older brother's 2 years older than me, and my younger one's 1 year and younger than me, and a day. Mm-hmm. And the family, once we were done with getting up in the morning, we had Christmas Eve at home. We'd go to church, and then we'd open presents, exchange presents as a family. And this was a weird year because we'd see the presents going under the tree from the first week of December, little by little. They'd be wrapped, and as a kid, as a 14, 15-year-old, you always check and see if your name was on, what your name was on. And I noticed that my name was on like 2 little things. And my brothers had 3, 4, 5 presents apiece, And my father, he came in home from work one day, and he said, "This is for your mother." And it was all wrapped, and he goes, "I want you to hide it in your closet. And Christmas Eve, when I give you the word, you bring it downstairs." So it was a rectangular box, you get it? Wrapped. Okay? Uh-huh. And we did all the presents, and, I was 15, so I wasn't going to cry and say, "Well, how come I only got 2 presents and my brother's got 4, So basically, we were done, and I had a pretty glum look on my face, and my father goes, go get that present out of your closet." So I bring it down, and my brothers and me said, "Mom, this is for you." And she said, "Jerry," they called me Jerry Boy because my father was Jerry. They said, "Jerry Boy, I can't believe it. You only got 2 presents. You open it for me." And there it was, a saxophone.
Oh,
so it was the most incredible Christmas I ever had in my life. To this day, I can't top it. And there's photos of me crying, as a kid. Yeah, so then there was the tenor. There it was. And as I'm talking to you, it's sitting on a stand. I still have it.
Oh,
it's a Mark VI. The Mark VI in it was Christmas of '68. I was going to be 15 in January. Okay, I was 14 technically on December 24th, 25th. But a week later, I was 15. So my father said 15, 5 years of clarinet. And there was saxophone. And I remember vividly knowing that they were expensive. And my father was a hardworking blue-collar guy, and I said, how did you, I said to him later, how did you, they're $600, I said,
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine they were $600 in 1968?
I know.
Do you know what that saxophone that I'm looking at is worth right now? But anyway, that was a lot of money back then, and I realized, again, my old man did this for me, and it wasn't just me. He did the same for my other brothers, and so there was the tenor, and then I started taking lessons on clarinet with Ray Gerrard, tenor and clarinet. Yeah. I realized the 5 years of clarinet made the tenor saxophone, or if we're an alto or a bari, it would have been the same. It made it so much easier. And when you have clarinet training, the rest of the single reeds are pretty. The clarinet's a bitch. It's the most difficult one to play well. It's the easiest one to play. Kids take to it quickly, but to play it well, I feel it's the reed instrument. Flute's pretty difficult too, but clarinet, any instrument is easy to play, and they're all difficult to master. That's my theory.
So did you pick up the flute on your own eventually because of the saxophone training?
I wanted to play the flute, and my teacher, Ray Gerrard, he said to me, let's wait till you're 18.
Huh.
I had really good methods of people who took me through the process of being a doubler,
Yeah.
and I waited on the flute again, and I probably could have, kids, there are people that do them in different orders and it works, but it made it so much easier for me because I didn't realize the reason that was to wait was because the clarinet fingerings are 4 different octaves and there's so many different fingerings. That's why it makes it more difficult. Than saxophone is like, pretty much basic fingerings compared to clarinet. But the flute and the saxophone have similar qualities of fingering. It's all, the embouchures are the difficult thing. They're different embouchures, Yeah, so I took the flute up. I studied with Ray Gerrard, and the same guy, and I was 18 years old. I became 18 in my senior year of high school, and I started taking the flute up, and I did a lot of, I loved the flute so much that I said to Ray, and Ray was a great musician. He was, he had all worlds covered. He understood the importance of legit, even if you want to be a jazz player, legit study is so important, Yeah, so I took the flute up with Ray again, and now I'm playing 3 instruments, and then I ended up getting an alto, bought that on my own, and a baritone, and I just compiled more and more as years went by. I think by the time I was about 27 or 28, I had, flutes, piccolos, bass clarinets, E-flat clarinet, soprano sax, bari. I had them all, pretty much. Alto flute. And I realized how easy they all were. I think because of the clarinet, tenor, flute, the rest were a piece of cake for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you ever mess around with any double reeds?
Yes, I have an oboe here in my office right now as my music room. As we speak, okay. I really suck at it. I didn't dedicate myself enough to it. I tried. I didn't try hard enough, and I don't regret it. I mean, I'm not looking at it like, oh, I should have played the oboe. I love the oboe. I love the English horn, bassoon, you know, but I just didn't, I didn't have time, I felt, to dedicate myself to all of that, you know, making reeds and, you know. In fact, my oboe now, it's a color, it's an intermediate oboe, and I use a plastic reed on it, you know. Yeah.
And you just do that on your own, just to
I picked it up.
Studio? Yeah.
I picked it up in a music store and never studied with anyone on the oboe, you know. Mm-hmm. I basically have done a few. I did a few gigs where I knew I had 2 measures of oboe. You know, I could do it. You know, I respect doubling so much. I know how important it is, and I think that when my flute chops are really considered pretty good, pretty up, and I know that there were things that I was schooled about with oboe and English horn, and it takes away from your flute sound a little bit, and I didn't want to lose that. It opens up your flute sound. I believe that. There are certainly people out there that could say bullshit, you know, and I would agree with them, but it's very few, you know. I have some good friends that double on oboe and are excellent flute players. I don't want to say you can't play the flute if you play the oboe, you know, but it doesn't, you know, oboe's hours and hours of dedication. I wanted to stick with my single reeds. And I was becoming a rock and roll, rhythm and blues, you know, musician on the road and doing that kind of thing, you know, so oboe didn't fit in, you know.
Now I've seen you demonstrate circular breathing a bunch of times. When did that come about?
Circular breathing. You're not going to believe this, but honestly, I could never do it. And I've only been circular breathing for about, I'm 62. I was 55.
Really?
Okay. So this is, you know, I'd always loved, like, I remember Rassan, seeing him live and being blown away by it, you know, and I saw Lenny Pickett do it with Tower of Power when Lenny and I are exact same age, and, you know, I was 18, 19, and so was he, and he was with Tower of Power, and I'm just out of high school, and I'm going to the Bottom Line in New York City to see one of my favorite bands, and this kid's up there circular breathing, you know, and I go home and I try it, and I just couldn't do it, and I kind of gave up. And then, you know, when you're done learning, you're done. That's one of my. You're an educator, so you must understand that, Sean. You know, and there was a liner note on a Stan Getz record that I read. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of that record, but he started talking about music, and he said that. He said, when you're done learning, you're done. And, you know, he was kind of interviewed. And I took that as a 15, 16-year-old kid when I started listening to Stan. I said, you know, man, that's something I should take throughout life. And I in my mid-50s, I said, why don't I do this? So I went online, and it taught me how. So all you kids out there listening, go online and Google circular breathing. And there was a tutorial that was so amazing. I swear I learned it in 48 hours. It took years of trying. And every teacher I talked to, they didn't know how to teach it. They didn't, you know, you don't have to do that, or it's a natural thing. If you can't do it, you can't do it. Well, that's what I thought after a while. I just can't do it. But I went online and I read through 3 or 4 paragraphs of how to circular breathe, and I couldn't believe it. It was amazing. You take a glass of water and a straw, and you blow bubbles like you're a little kid. And if you can continue blowing the bubbles as you're inhaling and exhaling, you're circular breathing. So you swallow a little water for a little bit. I mean, it took me 2 days. Not all day long, just like a few hours each day, just focusing on it. And the tutorial said, bring a straw in the bathtub with you. Mess around with it. You know, it's all about that. And, you know, and then it suggested that you just take your neck of the saxophone or a barrel and a barrel with a mouthpiece, you know, the mouthpiece in the neck on the saxophone, the barrel of the clarinet with the mouthpiece, and circular breathe on that. Then add another piece, because the longer the tubing, the more difficult. Once you get it, it could be a contrabass sax, and you can circular breathe. It's simple. It's a cute little thing. I love doing it. It's good for you. It's yoga-like, I think. And if that means anything to anyone, breathing is a relaxation. It's a stress reliever too. It's beautiful. Yeah, and that's what I did. So there you go. It's not good. You didn't know I started circular breathing so late, right?
No, because when you did it, it killed a couple times you were down at my school playing. Unbelievable. Just a few years. That's great.
Yeah.
I have to ask you one question about the Conan Show, at least. I follow you, Conan, on TV, of course, and see your social media posts and all that with different guests you've had on. I don't even know if you can answer this question. If you had to pick one or two guests, musical or non-musical, like ones that you were like, wow, I'm meeting this person, and like it was a surreal moment for you, is there one or two people, or is it just too many to even pick from?
Well, that's a great question. It's 23 years of doing the show right now, and there has been, we've had Academy Award winners, athletes, musicians I even got to play with. James Brown, they said we want the horn section, things like that are like, I can't believe this. It's like, the opportunity, and it's all about opportunity. It's not, there's so much luck in careers, I think, because there's so much talent out there, and I could, if I really, really gave it a lot of thought, I could, say, wow. But what does the wow mean? Dick Van Dyke blows me. That blew me away, and it may not to someone else, But the one that got to me the most, and to this day, I have to put it on number one, is Ted Williams. Sean, I'm a baseball fan, and I know you are.
Of course.
And
yep.
And a lot of us are. A lot of musicians love baseball. And by the way, your Phillies, what a great season it's been so far. You must be tickled pink. But anyway, back to Ted Williams. Ted was in the wheelchair at the time. He was being honored, the greatest living team. Remember that? Do you remember when the Sports Illustrated did the greatest living century of the 20th century players? Yeah, right. Ted Williams was the left fielder, and Ken Griffey Jr. was the center fielder. At the time, Cal Ripken was the shortstop.
Okay.
Or was it Ernie Banks? I don't even remember. I think they had two guys at each position. They had a bunch. Willie Mays was in there. It was a bunch of great guys. But Ted Williams, he was the ambassador. In fact, he was the one during that All-Star game, because it was at Fenway, that they were honoring. He was like, the guy. So the segment producer, his name was Frank Smiley, who was doing that segment, came up to me and said, we're having Ted Williams in a couple of days. We need to screen him for Conan. We know you love baseball, and we thought we'd like you to come into the room. So it was more than me just meeting him and shit. I went into a room with Ted Williams, a little cubicle, with a segment producer, and they wanted me to list 4 or 5 questions. I talked to him about, number one, the shift, the Ted Williams shift, which today is becoming common in baseball. And he said, well, that didn't last long, because and at the time, no one was shifting. It was Ted Williams and Willie McCovey and no one else. So Williams talked about that with me, and how he could just go the other way and had to stop doing it eventually. And then I asked him about the All-Star Home Run he hit, the Eufus pitch. I said, can you clear up the myth? Did you really know? Because they threw it the first time, and the catcher said, we're going to throw it again, Ted. And Ted said, the myth was that Williams said, you throw it again and it's going into the seats. right?
Mm-hmm.
So I asked him, is that myth or is that really true? He goes, well, I never said it exactly that way. I said, I dare you. I said, try it. Yeah, and he hit it out. You know, he did hit it out. But
right.
But the thing about it was that I'm sitting with him. Was like John Wayne. You know, it's just I don't know how to explain it. There was something about that man that I was enamored. You know, with. And sure enough, that question, the questions that those guests would get, they have to okay them, and the one with the Euphis fish, Conan used it, and that made me feel even, you know, better.
Yeah, wow.
But you know, Ted Williams, you know, the time that he came, he died shortly after that. You know, it was because of the money made, and no pictures, no baseball sign, but I didn't care about that, you know. I just have that memory, you know, which is enough for me. So I think that's pretty much my favorite. Yeah.
No, it's a great story.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I could talk a little longer with you, but you may have your limit on it, and I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, if you have time, I got two more quick ones.
Oh, good.
Okay. So here, I usually end most of the segments with these two. So, on your iPod, Jerry, in your rotation right now, what are some of the folks you're listening to, or styles or genres that might be on your iPod in the frequently played list?
Well, I will answer that question after I say this. For 2 years now, I've been enjoying vinyl.
Mm-hmm.
I love vinyl again. I'm really digging it. It's so great, and it makes me relax me. I get up off my butt and I flip the record over. You know, okay. But anyway, I do have an iPod. You know, I do have a phone with music in it, and you know, it's a lot of Coltrane and Michael Brecker right now.
Okay.
Stan Getz. You know, then when I go to the gym, I try to work out. I get on a bike and I put the iPod or iPhone, you know, the music that, you know, the earbuds are in, and I can listen to Dexter till the sun comes up. You know, it's just, I've just, Jerry Mulligan's another one, you know, it's saxophone. It seems to be saxophone, you know. But, you know, when I, you know, like I said, when you're done learning, you're done. You know, I'm just exploring so much of what Brecker did, and he's the consummate. He's just so incredible. And anyone listening to this, go to YouTube and put Michael Brecker in Spain. It's about 45 minutes. He's alone, a full auditorium, I guess about 1,500, 2,000 people. You could hear a pin drop. When I say he's playing alone, he's unaccompanied for 45 minutes. And me, I mean, I've turned some of my saxophone friends on. A lot of people know of this. You know, it blows my mind. You know, I had the utmost respect for Michael, and you know, he's left us with so much. You know, in the end, we're relegated to tape, I guess, if you're a musician. You know, but he'll live on forever. It's just wonderful. And Train, you know, I mean, this is you know, those two to me are the consummate. And I hate to say that because there's so many others. You know, it's just, you know, it's same with percussion, right? I mean, if someone says it's Buddy Rich, it's Buddy Rich, and what about Mel Lewis? You know, let's go back to Cozy Cole, where Buddy Rich, you know, admired.
Where did they learn?
Yeah, you know. Yeah, so I guess that's pretty much it. I mean, I love listening to Chet too. I have trumpets. There's, you know, a lot of trumpet players, and
I love his voice too, man. It's so.
He's so cool.
Things.
Yeah, there's a movie coming out. It's out already. I think it. Yeah, I don't know the name of it, but I've heard about it. I got to check it out.
Yeah, me too. Yep. When you were growing up, was there any other career or profession that you ever thought of yourself maybe going to or thinking about, or was it always music 100%?
It was always music. My fantasy was to play second base for the New York Yankees, but I figured out by the time I was 16 that was not going to happen. And by the way, Lou Donaldson, was looked at by the St. Louis Cardinals.
Really?
He was a hell of a baseball player, yeah. But anyway, Let me get back to the question. Okay. I always, because of my teacher Ray Gerrard and my band director, a fellow named Joe Silsky, my band director I was in a 7 through 12 school. They were experimenting with what they called junior, senior high schools. And, it was basically the 7th grade through the 12th grade was in one building. And, our stage band was mixed between 7th graders and, I was in the stage band in the 7th grade, and that was great because these seniors I was learning from older kids. I wasn't like the top banana in 7th grade. Saxophone. I had been playing a year or only, that kind of thing. So, it basically was a situation where you had orchestras and bands and groups that were mixed 7 through 12. My band director handled it very, very well. And I wanted to be an educator because of him. I thought, boy, this is great. He's teaching, kids, and he's playing duets with me and this kid Doug Williams, and finding good players and asking us to come in after school. Do you guys want to try some chamber music, or you want to do this, or In fact, the stage band, I wasn't in that until the 9th grade, but I was in the other groups that he had, orchestral groups and wind ensembles, and all of this music that was offered by him to the young players made me respect what he did. And he'd take his clarinet out or his saxophone out and join us, and that was like, oh my God, my teacher's playing with us. And he'd bring a friend in, the chemistry teacher who played the drums. And I was like, oh my God, Mr. Gemma's playing the drums, and I just thought, this is cool. And I went to school thinking I would get a teaching degree to fall back on, which my father recommended. And I just, I would have done that, but I went on the road halfway through college and never went back.
Okay.
I regret that, though. I do. I honestly regret it. But go ahead. So yeah, I wanted to. Music was a full-time player. I always wanted to be a studio musician. Which, how can a kid want to be that?
Right.
And but I became it. I pretty much lived my dream. I think education, is as rewarding as finishing a session or doing a gig and you sounded great and getting off on the music you play. I think helping young kids, or anyone for that matter, if you can give something, it's very rewarding. And I think reward is the answer. What makes you feel good out of your work. It's not about the money. It's not about, the fame and all that. It's deeper. It goes way beyond that. I like to give. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's beautiful. Well, yeah. Thanks, man. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I hope to see you soon when you're back out.
I hope so. Oh, that'd be great to do. Great, and man, that you wanted me to do that gig with you. I wish I could have made that. It sounded like a lot of fun, and you have a good one when you're out there. Where is it? It's coming up next weekend, is it?
Yeah, it's in Yardley, actually. Yep.
Yeah. Well, you keep going, man. I see what you're doing, and I like it. I admire what you're doing, Sean.
Thank you, Jerry.
All right. Okay.
Back at you. All right. I'll talk to you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Today's music was provided by the Max Weinberg 7. To purchase this and other recordings featuring Jerry Vivino, please follow the links below this podcast.